am compelled by Schlock. Well, grab your hiking boots and get in your car because today we are going geo-schlocking. What is up, everybody? I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous, and we are here to talk about the movie G.P.S. the movie, or as I like to call it, Shirt Nipples the movie. That was a big high point for me.
That's
How's
hilarious.
it going, Chris?
That's good. That's a really funny joke for anyone who saw the movie. Everything's going good, you know. At this GPS location, all is well.
What do you know what your coordinates are?
No.
Oh, or do you know, or you just won't give them out? So, Chris, have you ever messed around with GPS, global positioning system for those who don't know?
No.
It is.
I wish I had. It sounds like it's fun, but I ain't got time for that.
It's the precursor to the Maps app on y'all's phone, so you don't have to figure out how to read a real map anymore. You can just have your phone tell you. That's GPS was the precursor to that, and people had these little GPS, or actually they weren't very little. They were like the size of remotes. They were pretty huge, and they tracked your coordinates. And people, sorry, I'm giving a little bit of a history lesson here because this is, I think, somewhat dated. For a very specific time in our recent history. So people would take their GPS machines and they would do a thing called geocaching, where they would people would hide things, little treasures at certain coordinates, and they would put out on like a website or something the coordinates, and people would go and find them. And I guess maybe it was really intense. I don't know. Chris, have you ever been geocaching?
No, sir. I've never been on any kind of treasure hunt.
Never dabbled?
I've always wanted to go on a treasure hunt, but I'm more of the Goonies kind of treasure hunt than GPS treasure hunt. But
so you want a real map? You want a real map?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all wrinkly and old and has blood on it and riddles and skulls and crossbones.
Well, so I have been geocaching, like the WIMP version of geocaching, I think. So I found out about geocaching in like 2008, I think. And then I was like, oh, neat, that sounds cool. The guy who was telling me about it was kind of a dork, so I didn't really take it anywhere. But then a few years later, my roommates, they were talking about it, and you could just get it as an app on your phone at this point in time. So we went and checked it out. And indeed, it is a little bit like going on a quest, because it's a whole community of people where they give you like clues about how to find the thing you're looking for, because sometimes the thing you're looking for is like this big. It's very, very tiny, and they hide it all around, under rocks or whatever, and you have to search for it. The coordinates only get you so far, and then you have to like use your eyeballs to look. And so the community will leave clues like look up, or must crouch, must crawl, or
Yeah.
And so you'd get to the place and you'd have to like sort of solve some riddles a little bit to try and figure it out. And basically everything that I found was like, they're like these little rolls of paper, and people write the date that they found it. And if it's big enough, some people will put in like Tupperware things, and you like leave a little trinket.
Oh, okay. That's kind of cool.
A stick of gum.
I heard that Bono and the Edge are really into geocaching. Like they've been doing it since like 1987, but they still haven't found what they're looking for.
That's it. Good night, everybody. No, so I picked this movie for a very specific reason, because I also, at one point in time, made a short film about geocaching called GeoKiller. Unfortunately, it was about 10 years after this movie came out. I never heard of this movie before, but yeah, we got the picture right here. It's a little thumbnail for it. We're going to put it up on YouTube so that you guys can check it out. But I just thought it was like such a crazy coincidence that I found a movie that was near exactly what I was thinking when I made this idea of like there perhaps being a killer out there who was leaving clues at these geocaching sites, and these people had to go find it. That's not what this movie is about. It kind of starts that way, but
yeah,
it doesn't really turn out that way.
Does your movie star Bono or The Edge?
In my heart.
Okay, that's close enough.
They're featured in my heart. No, that's all I really have. That's my plug for the movie. For this movie, G.P.S, the movie, it came out in the information I found says 2006, 2007, and 2008. So it's hard for me to tell when this movie actually came out. What I think happened is that the movie was completed in 2006, and then it went up like in various forms in 2007, 2008. Maybe it like went to a festival in 2008. So that was like or 2007. So that was the official release. And then 2008, it went up onto streaming platforms or something like that. That would be my guess for it. Budget wise, no idea. I have no idea what the budget is for it. What do you think?
Not very much. Not very much.
You think?
I think this is a micro budget movie.
Up or below 100,000? Below, I would say.
Below.
So something that I thought was really interesting watching this movie, and I couldn't get a good screenshot of it, but watching the credits, they have like a ton of support thank yous, and just very interesting because 2006, that was before crowdfunding was really a thing, right? Before Kickstarter.
It feels like it was, but I don't actually know the timeline for crowdfunding and Kickstarter.
Well, it's not, the thank you list isn't so long. It doesn't, the movies that are crowdfunded today, I mean, those lists are just insanely long. This is just like thanking everybody in their family who like pitched in $20 or something.
And, we can segue into Web of Schlock and kind of keep going back and forth, but this feels like a very family and friends project. Like a lot of these people, Absolutely. A lot of the actors, the woman who played Frankie, Hallie Shepard, co-wrote it with the director Eric Colley, and they're still working together today. They've done other shorts, they've done other features. Mm-hmm. I've watched some of the trailers for them, and they look pretty good. They look like legit movies. Like, and a lot of these actors, you'll see them kind of reappearing with each other, and they've gotten real work in a lot of TV and small parts in A-list movies. But it feels like they've all kind of stuck together for the most part. So I'm guessing their crowdfunding was probably their friends and family and pitching in together.
Pretty cool. That's pretty
really
cool.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And I mean, that's really all I have for Web of Schlock.
They didn't branch out into a whole lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit here and there, especially with the actors. There's a lot of like, okay, they're in this episode of NCIS, or they're in this episode of,
Well, watching it, I thought they were probably like pretty talented people. The music in it, I think that they probably did a lot of it. I think a lot of it was probably stock music, but the ending song, like we always talk about how we wish it would come back, where during the ending credits, like they would sing a song that explains exactly what happened in the movie.
Yeah, that was such an 80s, early 90s thing. Yeah. I love it.
And that went away, but in G.P.S, the movie, we have it. It's the G.P.S hunt, G.P.S hunt. Like, I thought, surely they made this song themselves. Surely it's the guys in the movie singing it, and indeed it is.
Or they found the song and they're like, man, this would make a great movie. Let's just rip it off.
That would be an incredibly random song to create.
I'm sure there's some dude out there who's like making really, really narrative-based songs that's just like, someday someone's going to steal this and make a movie.
There's just a whole subgenre of GPS core. So moving on from the web of schlock, the way we usually do this show is we talk about the good, we talk about the bad, and we talk about the schlock. We like to think about, what do these movies do well? Generally, right, they're low budget, they're pretty campy, but we're not here to just crap all over movies, because we think that there's like something to learn in there, and there's generally something good in every movie and every piece of art that if you're an artist, you can take away from it in some way to appreciate or help grow your own art or your own eye for film or whatever. So going on to good, the bad, and the schlock. Chris, I mean, we're already kind of talking about it. I think that this movie was probably incredibly fun to make for these people. I peeked at some of the credits as well, and it looks like this is a lot of these people's first film. Full-length film. They did some shorts prior to it. Some of the actresses, I think, were in other things prior to this, small parts. But this was like, I think collectively their first feature full-length film. And I think they had a really good time. I think obviously the concept, I like the concept of following these coordinates, like looking for clues, doing things like that, trying to figure out some sort of mystery. Mm-hmm. Did they pull it off really well? We'll leave that to the viewers to decide. But I do think that the concept is awesome, and I would like to see it developed more. And honestly, there are some great shots in this, great sets. The forest looks beautiful. I mean, they really captured just that lush green look. I mean, if you're going to make a movie about going out into the wilderness to look for things, you got to have a beautiful backdrop for the movie. And I do think that they accomplished that. And they had, when I was talking about shots, they had what I call a very happy accident. This is probably the most impressive thing to me in this movie. It's
Thankfully, no one was hurt.
Yeah. So apparently this was a complete accident where they're in their four-wheeler chase and they're going over this bridge and they hit the side and they go flying off. When I watched this, I was like, oh no, it looks so real. And I was like, oh, wow, these guys, what a great job. And then I read that, no, this was an accident.
Yeah,
fortunately, they caught it on tape. Yeah. This dude right here, he is holding on for his life, hoping that he is not going to go over. This guy, he's a goner. He's doomed. Hopefully he won't hit that four-wheeler. They're not going to get their deposit back. But hey, happy accident. Like it was a great conclusion to a very funny, high-speed, low-stakes race. Bad. There's some problems in this movie. The biggest part is I don't really know who these characters are. Like, and I don't mean like three-dimensional wise. I mean like, what are their names? Because the way they introduced all the characters was just such a crazy way to me. Like I couldn't latch onto them. So we have like the high-speed chase intro, and then we're back at these two dudes' house, apartment, or whatever. And there is the news program going about someone who's committed fraud. Apparently that's their friend and maybe someone who should be like a major part of the movie, but we're being introduced to them via this broadcast that these guys are passively listening to. They're not like, hey, turn it up. This is something about Shep. What's going on? Remember Shep from college? Like they don't do anything like that
in the movie yet.
They're just like listening to the news, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we know that guy. And then they say something about having like a great night last night, and these two girls walk out of the room, and this suave looking, I don't know if he's that suave. Once I got this picture of him, he looks kind of goofy, but he's like, hey guys, and then like goes back. I don't know if we get a name from this guy or what's their living situation. I don't really understand. And then we get a whole new group of people, and I'm still reeling from who's this guy, who's the guy on the news. And so the whole introduction of people just went went past me, and I spent most of the movie trying to figure out the relations between people. I got another bad. I call it kissing siblings. So we have our guy Travis, I believe his name is, and then the girl who's supposed to be the main love interest, and they're all over each other throughout like the beginning of the film. Like this, you can't see the picture very well, but they're like kind of wrestling around the campfire, and they say something like, "Oh no, we're just like brother and sister." I'm like, "Yeah, kissing brother and sister, kissing cousins." And then later we find out that Travis is actually in some sort of relationship with this other girl. I don't know. All of that was just so loosey-goosey weird to me. Like I had a really hard time following it. And then that goes into probably my biggest bad is that just the plot in general of this. To me, it feels like they just started filming without when you start a film, when you start putting pictures to digital cellulite, I don't know what it's called. You do it out of order, right? You do it in order of convenience rather than order of a chronological order of the movie. And it felt like to me, maybe they started at a different spot in the movie and they were still working on the script. And then they like just kind of felt their way through it. And we have we have.
It felt like that. For sure.
I call it shady plot threads. Because we get this part where Andrew is looking through Bob's bag and he's got all these ransom letters cut out of this magazine, and that really kind of goes nowhere. They don't really say that it's been planted, which I think we have to assume it is. They confront him with it, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know." And then everyone completely drops it. It was just so odd to me. Like, was that a different story at some point in time? Well, I don't know.
Well,
and that's all I have. Okay. That's all I have. You hit me up with your good and bad.
Okay. Good. I do like the premise. It does seem like they were having a lot of fun making it. I like that they have a harbinger, and he's a very silly harbinger. Just like a comic relief.
I completely forgot about that guy.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that in Schlock.
Yeah. I kind of liked Bob as a character. Just at first I hated him. He's so super annoying, and then he just grew on me. Mm-hmm. It looked, for being shot on video, I assume it was shot on video. That part looked awful, but what they did with it did look good. Like, I thought that they made the forest look good. I thought some of the shot composition and things were kind of weak, but I thought like the actual the look of it was pretty good for like what they had to work
the color
with.
Grading.
Yeah. So that's really all I have for good. So the bad, I'm going to kind of go off on bad, but I don't want it to feel like I'm attacking the movie, because a lot of it is just schlock, and a lot of it is how you have to judge a micro budget films differently. It's They only have so much to work with. Okay, so it does look like it's shot on video, because it was, right? And that's bad, but it's also, that's what they had to work with, so you can't really fault them for it. Some of the acting was awful. I think some of the acting was good. I think sometimes some of the actors were really good in a scene and really bad in another scene. I think Bob was really good. Like, I think he did comedy well, but it was tonally out of place in a lot of spots, so it didn't. So it's not just on the actors. I think the dialogue was awful. I think the dialogue was just really bad. And so again, you work with what you have on these budgets, and it's still a movie. Like, it doesn't take it away completely. There's not a lot of real horror or scares. They try some jump scares. The plot is kind of all over the place. I think if they would have focused on one plot, like an actual killer who's messing with them with G.P.S, or a friend who's out there messing with them, but then you have the twist at the end, and then you have the friend who robbed a bank, and there are too many possible bad guys and not very many good scares.
Right. It's supposed to make, was it supposed to be a whodunit, but it just didn't land?
It just, like you said, it felt like a bunch of different movies. So right when you get into one and you're feeling it, it completely changes rail and you're like, oh, I don't know what this is. I don't really care. Let's pull up the picture, the beating picture.
The where they're clearly like hitting a pillow or something.
Right. So the problem I have with this, again, I think off-camera violence can be really cool and really effective. And I think some of the best movies ever do it. And I think you can show the violence too. And I think a smart director knows when to show it and when to imply it. But you have to, when you don't have a budget for real special effects and real violence and fake blood and all that, you really have to be careful how you set it up. Like, we don't see anyone below this video. If they would have moved the camera down and had a person there and then moved the camera back up, and then that person could have rolled away and then they hit a pillow, it would have had a completely different effect. But all we get is them hitting a pillow. And there was also the time when they're stabbing a guy in the water. And I get you're trying to be creative because of a budget and because of, you don't want to injure anyone. You probably don't have stuntmen available. There's so many reasons to do it the way they did. But I think they could have set it up a little better to make that more effective.
So you didn't like the stabbing in the water?
I thought that's was more effective than this other one.
Right. Okay.
Right. So that's the way to do it right. And the way they did there in the video is the way to do it wrong. And in general, they did it wrong a lot more than they did it right. Like, I get that you did it for budgetary reasons, but you need to make it come off like you chose to do it for stylistic reasons.
See, they had another part where Becky, I think her name is, the killer's standing behind her and he raises his hand like he's going to chop her in half, but then he puts it down and like runs her through. Right. That was absolutely so they didn't have to show it and do the effect. Then
don't even raise it up. Don't put that idea in our mind.
Raise it up, put it down, and cut
it. Right.
Like cut the shot, don't cut the person. So that's my bad. It just, the plot was a mess and you just didn't know where it was going. And then the twist, it felt like, horror movies have twists. Let's put a twist in. Like, it felt like they were working through movie making while they were making this movie, which is exactly what they were doing. And from the trailers and previews I've seen of the stuff they've done later on, they've gotten much better. So it's an exercise in how to move into this world. So good on them, but it's not like I'll ever watch this again. Yeah, for sure. Are you ready to move into Schlock?
Yeah, let's do some Schlock.
All right. Well, clearly the movie is a mess. I do think it's kind of a beautiful mess. I just imagine people wanting to break out, wanting to create film, wanting to do this crazy thing that you see in theaters and on TV, and just going for it and being in that world. And so to me, that's the beautiful part, that they picked it up and that they did it. And it has a lot of really great ideas, like you said, with the beating. That could have been very effective. My biggest problem with it wasn't so much that it was like off camera. It was that because they want the reveal, right? They want to get the reveal. They don't want to show the person first. They want the reveal at the end. But the problem is they're like holding the bat so weird and like,
there's just so many problems.
If they like held it at the bottom and just really like wailed on something,
right? And they could have had some ketchup bottle to squirt blood up or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can still keep the reveal. You just have to establish the stakes of what's going to happen off screen. Like Reservoir Dogs comes to mind as one of the most perfect examples when he pans over when he's cutting the ear off, like just brilliant. And like, it's cringe and you're like, but like you've set up the stakes, you've set up the expectation for what's going to happen. And now it's like, oh, we know he has the budget to cut an ear off. Why is he moving the camera? Pure style. right? Pure storytelling, right? And so, again, I think you're right that these people wanted to have fun, and I think they did have fun, and it's awesome that they're doing it, and I'm glad that they're still doing it and making progress. But I can only forgive a micro budget film so long when I watch something like El Mariachi or Clerks or Slackers, or there are Pie. There's so many movies that
Bad Taste.
Yeah, Bad Taste that are super low budget, that are brilliant, and that feel like a real solid, amazing movie.
Yeah. Well, so the bear subplot. What did you think of that? What was that all about?
I think it was comic relief. I think I think it was comic relief. I think it was like a red herring. I think that it was a smart, fun way to put a harbinger in. And I think they probably shouldn't have done it because they don't have the budget for a bear, so you can't really pay that.
I swore, I was like, okay, this means in the end a bear is going to jump out and like save them at some point in time,
right?
Like,
and
or kill someone,
right? There's so many ways, and like with the special effects they're doing, they could have just had a crappy bear. I thought toward the end it got better, just because it got schlockier. Like, let's bring up the 4-wheeler chase picture.
This was incredible.
Right. Again, like, we need to practice making a chase scene, guys. Well, let's write one in and practice it. And so it's super slow. It's super silly. Like, why all of a sudden is he running when he's been fighting them? He's like this bad killer. It doesn't make sense, but fine. And then at some point in time, they stop and do a little weird chase, and then they hop back on the other person's 4-wheelers.
They do a swap. They could have played yakety sax over this, just right.
Like, and then it all culminates at the messed up stunt where they fly over the bridge. Best sequence in the entire movie, and it was so funny and schlocky, but it was also tonally so different. I mean, there were so many parts in this movie that were tonally so different from everything else that it was jarring. And I'm like, if you're going to do it, lean into it. Do more of this silliness. Like, I love having a slow chase with a masked killer on 4-wheelers where you swap 4-wheelers. Yeah. That is amazing.
Well, you saw a cocaine bear, didn't you? And we kind of had this discussion about, like, if you're going to do something, you got to go for it, and you got to lean into it hard. If this is your premise, you got to go. If you're going to have a goofy, ridiculous comedy, you got to have a goofy, ridiculous comedy. If you're just going for pure schlock, go for pure schlock. If you're going for a slasher, go for a slasher.
You just double down and dive in. And again, Bear did it much better than this film. Obviously, there's some just amazing parts of Cocaine Bear, but my problem with it is similar to this movie, where if you're not used to schlock and to horror movies and to just really off the wall art movies and crazy, just out there movies, then it's going to feel super crazy to you, right? But that's not the audience you're going for. The audience
I would say I would say specifically if you're not into indie movies, because I would call this like a straight up indie film.
Yeah, and this is just as much about Cocaine Bear as this movie. But, like, again, it's knowing who your audience is. Like, you don't want to like have normal people go to your movie and go, that was really weird, I didn't like it. You want to have the people who love weird movies go to that film and be like, oh my gosh, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen, right?
Right.
So if these people were going for a horror movie.
Well, in this case, it's hard to say, because I know that, like, when a person creates something, of course they want other people to see it. They want to, like, get it out there and have everyone be like, oh, wow, how this changed the way I look at life or whatever. But I think in a lot of ways, their audience was maybe themselves. Their audience was maybe those people in the credits that they all list that helped make the movie. Yeah, and so they were there to see their brother or sister do this cool looking movie.
Yeah, you could be right. You could be right. And again, if that's the case, I can't fault them for it. But let's talk about some other funny stuff. One of my favorite moments is at the end when Bob does the beer toss at what's her name's head, and like clocks her in the head with the beer, and then doesn't try and fight her off. Yeah, he just gets shot. But like it's that perfect movie moment where like the guy you forgot about comes up and he's gonna just stop the bad guy enough that we can all stop the bad guy,
and it's just a tink.
Yeah, he throws the beer bottle and you're like, yeah, and then tink, and then she shoots him. So that was some really cool comedy and like, you know, undermining expectations. And like, I'm like, man, where was this for the rest of the movie? There were little hints of it. And again, I would totally watch another movie these people did, because I think that it would be a lot better.
It could have been very kind of, I was trying to think of something similar like a Pineapple Express, right? Where it's like a crime movie, but there's just these imbeciles in it. Yeah. Right. And so the thing is, the rest of the world around it has to be very serious, right? But there's like this one or two people that like are just like out in the clouds.
Yeah, totally. I think we have some more pictures. The G.P.S. dudes. I thought this was nice because it really set the tone for what I wanted the movie to be, and it didn't live up to it all the time, but it's a good start to the movie.
I have to admit, I started watching this movie, and as soon as the G.P.S. dude's license plate came up, I stopped it, and I was like, we have to do this for Schlock. This is something that Chris has to see. So I actually started watching this like a couple of months ago, and I was like, no, like, this is for the show.
It's little things like this that tell me that they are talented and clever people that have, I mean, it's also silly and over the top.
Well, like they're doing this car chase and they almost hit that oncoming car of the family.
Right. And then they have a close up of the kid going, oh, that was awesome or cool or whatever. Yeah.
Like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah. And again, it had that fake kind of Hollywood, like, you know, where it's if the movie's about poker, it's going to make poker seem like the coolest thing ever. If the movie's about being a hacker, it's going to make hackers.
Everyone wants to be a poker player. Everyone wants to be a hacker.
Right. So it starts out with like, this is what GPS hunting is really like. And I'm like, it's just so unbelievable and silly and over the top. Like that. Yeah, it's just so unbelievable, but I like it. And it sets up a fun tone. And I like the bad guy G.P.S. people who come back and pop up. But again,
who are the people that you would absolutely think are the bad guys, right? Like, oh, someone is messing with us. It's clearly them, right? Wouldn't you be on that?
Totally, that's what you would do.
So we had another picture here, the 4 mile picture. I know that was something that you liked and that you found interesting about this movie. Was it just their use of graphics, or
no? It was the use, and it's I'm ambivalent about it. I love it and I hate it because the idea behind it is really cool, and I think their execution is meh. But I like the idea of like setting up story beats and story chunks with how far they're in and kind of showing this map. And it's, you know, it's of the time, it's cheap graphics, but it works because that's kind of what the GPS looked like back then. Like, you know, like if you were to look at an old GPS thing for your car, you know, from 20 years ago, it's
that digital lettering. I don't know what the font is called, but
and like the topography and how the lines are kind of like, it feels like something that you would have actually seen on a screen in your car in 2004.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm like, okay, if that's what they're doing, if this is about, you know, geocaching and GPS and all that, then it's a really cool device to like to segment into like little chapters, your movie. Again, I don't think they do it super well. I think it almost feels haphazard when they throw them in, but I think the idea behind it was really cool, and sometimes it worked really well.
Yeah, and this movie, I mean, really, maybe that is the best part of it, is that it's like sort of a little time capsule of a small period of time where something was like underground and cool and really hot for a second. It's like like if they made like, I don't know, like a Pokemon Go, the film, where like all these people are chasing Pokemon around. So
Except for that'll still be around in 20 years.
is it? Are people still playing that?
I think they are. Yeah.
I don't know. All I remember is that there was one summer where people were walking into traffic because they were.
I think it was like 2018 or 2019. Yeah, like everyone was doing it, but I still think the kids are playing it these days. Maybe not the adults, but the kids still are, and they're the future.
So I think that's all the time that we have for today. I think we've talked about as much as we can with this movie. From what I understand, if you get it on DVD, there's like 2 hours of behind the scenes special features stuff. If you want to know more about it, so Chris, what are we watching next time?
We are watching The Return of the Living Dead.
Yes, man, that is one of my favorites. I'm very excited. So check out G.P.S, check out Return of the Living Dead. Hey, if you stuck around this long, check out my short film. It's about 8 minutes. GEOKILLER. Same premise, but it's about this long. It only takes a small portion of your time. Anyway, I am Darby Ellis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. We have been compelled by Schlock. We will see you next week.
Schlock.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Schlocky, schlock, schlock. Schlock. Schlock, schlocky, schlock, schlock.